Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is British and Irish Lions week, and I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely buzzing. Woke up today in such a good mood. A little bit apprehensive about what we're going to see this week in terms of the Springboks, if we will see the Springboks. So, we've got some good news on that front, but absolutely buzzing. The British and Irish Lions are in the country. They posted on social media at about 5 o'clock South African Standard Time that they are in the country. They are off the plane. They are into their bio bubble. It's happening. It's here. We had months and months and months of what should have been people buying jerseys and, should have been booking their tickets, booking their flights and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we can't be doing that as fans. But the good news is we will still get to watch British and Irish Lions rugby. Saturday, we don't know what time it is. Looks like it will be earlier. We will be seeing the Emirates Lions taking on the British and Irish Lions as we finally get the tour underway. So I'm absolutely buzzing about it. We've got so much planned. Between myself and Shord and Lacanio, hopefully another Stephen as well. Lots of us are very keen to bring you what is hopefully going to be some of the most unique and comprehensive coverage of this sort of type of show in terms of this type of fan channel that rugby's ever seen. We're quite new in terms of establishing ourselves and stuff, especially in the country. So very, very excited for what is to come. So yeah, please let me know what you think of what's going to happen down the chat. Let's go and see who's here. Grant Swartz, how's it all? First time seeing that intro. It's really cool. Thank you. Yeah, we've got to go a little bit big here for the British and Irish Lions. So we've got a bit of a new sort of studio look. We've got Bill the Lion that's in on the desk there. The trophy you see on the table is what the Springboks and the Lions will be playing for. The first time ever that there will be a trophy in this series, which is going to be quite interesting. But you're on the show tonight over the next probably sort of 45 minutes, but might go to an hour. Let's just sort of see what we've got. We are talking about Springboks avoiding the COVID-19 scare. We're talking about CHEETAHS versus Bulls cancelled. We're talking about the Emirates Lions announcing their squad for the British and Irish Lions. A couple of transfers in and around the world. And a look at some of the fixtures to come. Because we've got a very busy week of rugby, as well as a busy weekend of rugby. And unfortunately, this will be the only one. We might do one on Wednesday. We're still a little bit unsure. We might be live on Wednesday for a new show because of the change in the Currie Cup times. But we will be live on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're debuting a new show as well. Thursday's going to be something quite cool. So there's just so much stuff. But we will be live pretty much every single day except for tomorrow. So right now, smash like on the video, subscribe to the channel so you get a notification every single time we go live. And we'll start with, I suppose, the breaking news. And that is... in the Currie Cup, there will be no Bulls versus CHEETAHS this week. That game was scheduled to be on Thursday at 4:45, and unfortunately, it has been cancelled as a result of a huge COVID outbreak. Well, CHEETAHS are just in a mess, but they had a bigger COVID-19 outbreak, which has meant that a lot of their players are unavailable. It's actually apparently between injuries, national call-up, and COVID-19, the CHEETAHS currently only have 20 players available for the match on Wednesday. So they've unfortunately had to cancel it. 21 players are not available. 11 players are in isolation. 7 are injured, and 3 players are away on national duty, which includes obviously the Sevens as well, with the Blitzboks learning their fate. We'll actually have a look at that in terms of what the Blitzboks group is looking like for the Olympics. 4 members of the CHEETAHS coaching staff are also currently in isolation. And there's also a bunch of injuries in and amongst the juniors, which means that they can't really pull up there. The big thing is the front row. Because there's a COVID-19 case within the front row, it rules out the entire front row. And as a result, CHEETAHS do not have 4 props available. You have to have 4 props going into a match. 4 specialist front rowers. So you have to be able to have a starting front row, and you have to have 2 props on the bench. You can name somebody and hook up who's sort of still adapting there, but your front rankers have to be well trained and stuff like that. So as a result, the CHEETAHS do not have a team, and unfortunately had to cancel that tonight. As a result, the Western Province versus the Bulls, Western Province versus Sharks, which is at this stage, touch wood, is still going ahead. The kickoff will be at 5 o'clock South African Standard Time, not 7 o'clock, as a result of the new curfew in South Africa. Curfew now 9 p.m. We await to see how that's going to affect the Springbok versus Georgia test on Friday, as well as the British and Irish Lions versus the Lions on Saturday, where those games are expected to come forward to be able to sort of work around curfew. But the good news is we have got the go-ahead. It was gazetted today that all professional sporting events can still go ahead. So we had the SA Under-20s today. We will have Currie Cup on Wednesday. We will have Currie Cup on Saturday. We will have Springbok Rugby hopefully on Friday. But we won't see the Bulls and the CHEETAHS. So as a result of this, in line with the rules for the Currie Cup, the Bulls get a 4-point victory, not a 5-point, not a 2 points each. Bulls will get 4 points and Cheetahs will get none. So the Bulls, I think they'll actually be a little bit frustrated at that, actually, because I reckon that they would have sat there. I mean, I know that they would have had quite a quick turnaround, but I think that given the Cheetahs are so depleted at the moment, after having just watched the Greekers go and beat them, with by a bonus point, I think the Bulls would have been sitting there thinking, maybe we can actually go and get a bonus point up against the Cheetahs, given the fact that they're so injury ridden. So I don't think they'll be happy with that. I think Jake White will be happy to have some rest, because I think that he's been quite worried about these players who were, as I said, were flying around the world, playing in Italy, be beaten in Italy, and then having to come back here and then be able to field a team and stuff like that. So he says that the players are very tired, but I think it was a game where they probably would have thought that they could have tried and potentially pushed for a bonus point. So it's quite frustrating. Look, as a fan, it's just frustrating because you want to be able to watch rugby, and I think that, unfortunately, being in the middle of such a bad third wave, I'll be very surprised if that's the only Currie Cup game that gets cancelled. A lot of the domestic teams are not going into their bio bubbles. For example, the Lions last week Thursday went into a full bio bubble. We'll talk about the Springbok one as well. But unfortunately, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of cope with the Currie Cup. Do they start putting in stricter measures? It's difficult because you can't just go into a bio bubble indefinitely. It's one thing. Like now the Lions series, all the Springboks are currently in a bio bubble until the end of the Lions series. But it's difficult to be able to say to your Pumas players, right, cool. I mean, first of all, do they even have the money to be able to go into a hotel environment or whatever for 2 months? It's meals, it's just not very feasible at the moment. But in terms of the Springboks, we will hopefully, touch wood at this stage, have Springbok action on Friday. After a bit of a scare yesterday with 3 players testing positive in Herschel Yankees, Vincent Koch and Spur and Corsi, the Springboks then cancelled their media engagements today, which is a little bit worrying, as they waited feedback from the Castle Lager Series medical committee, which is sort of dealing with all the COVID cases and how they kind of approach the tour and stuff like that. And the good news is the Springboks were back on the training field today. They were received permission. It also looks like Herschel Yankees has returned a negative test because he was part of the group that is training. So it looks like right now Spur and Corsi and Vincent Koch will not feature on Friday, but Herschel Yankees is back in the picture and could still play as the Springboks return to the field for the first time since 2019. But that's very, very good news. We should hopefully have a media engagement tomorrow. I'm trying to check if there was one officially given it. Yeah, we are supposed to be having the team will be released tomorrow, and there'll be a press conference tomorrow as well as I get. So we'll try and make sure that we are in that, and so we get all that sort of thing. And yeah, so in theory tomorrow, Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus will name their side for Friday, which should be quite interesting. I mean, just in terms of players who have linked up with the squad late, who's going to feature, players who have got injuries we might be able to see, what's going to happen. So that is what is the plan in theory. But it's just good to see that we're going to hopefully see the game on Friday. I think Georgia arrived on Sunday and are in a bio bubble. So they will hopefully have no issues there in terms of the tests and stuff like that they're going through. There's been quite a lot of talk about the bio bubble that the Springboks were in, and I don't think that they were in a strict one in Bloemfontein. I mean, the press conference sort of made it seem, but it was quite sort of common knowledge that players were kind of going home and seeing family and stuff like that. So it definitely wasn't a complete bio bubble. I mean, I saw a couple of photos of players in sort of casual clothes at the airports and stuff like that. So it didn't seem to be a complete 100% strict bio bubble, but I think that they have now. I think it was yesterday when they amalgamated as a squad. They are now into a proper bio bubble, like hotels, hotel ground, training ground type of thing. So hopefully, those tests yesterday will be the last of it. Every single team, all the domestic teams, stuff like that, they have to go into a 10-day bio bubble before their games. So the Lions are already in their bio bubble, for example, and the Sharks after Wednesday will go into the bio bubble on Thursday. I think actually it's a week bio bubble they have to go into. So that's how they're going to sort of prevent future issues like this. That is the current plan. Whether it'll work, we don't know. And in theory, the Lions are pretty much in a fairly strict bubble throughout the entire tour. At the end of the day, nothing's open. So even if they weren't in the bubble, I mean, for the British and Irish Lions, they can't go to pubs, they can't go to restaurants, they can't go to the theatre, they can't go to movies, they can't go to a public gym. We're really shut down here in South Africa. It really isn't looking good, but at this stage, looks like lots of measures are being put in place so that we can make sure that we get this tour ahead. Sean Rafael, have you decided to how to simulate the brain mess up with the Lions versus Lions game? No, I haven't. I need to actually have a constructive brainstorm session and decide exactly what I'm going to go with. Maybe the colonizers versus the colonized, or the real Lions versus those European ones. I don't know. I do not know. Might just go Emirates versus the Brits. But yeah, it's a problem for Saturday. I've still got a bit of time, so I'll still sort of think it through. Good evening, says, will you live stream the Lions versus British Lions game and the Box game? Yeah, we'll be live on Friday night and we'll be live on Saturday. We'll also be live on Wednesday. And then Saturday, we don't quite know which games we're going to be live for. I want to try and do at least 2 watch-alongs on Saturday. There's so much rugby. In fact, let's just have a look at exactly what we have to look forward to this weekend in terms of rugby action. There is unbelievable amount of rugby on Saturday. If anybody's getting any sort of tax returns or anything like that, then go and invest in a couple of extra screens and stuff like that, because there really is an unbelievable amount of rugby this weekend. I mean, for a start, the under-20 series comes to a quick close, so it's the Junior Box versus Argentina on Saturday at 1 p.m. And then so Friday we've got Pumas versus Griquas at 4 p.m. We probably won't be live for that game. We're still sort of waiting to see if maybe Sean or Lukanya can maybe do that game. But we will obviously be live for the Springbok game on Friday night. Then on Saturday, Western Province versus Sharks, Hoppers 2. We're going to try and do that one as well. But we've also got some international rugby on Saturday. At 9 a.m. Standard Time, we've got New Zealand versus Tonga. The first time New Zealand will play this year. We've got Ireland versus Japan as well. And then we've got Wales versus Canada on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we've got Wales taking on Argentina. And we've got England taking on the USA. So I'm going to try and see if we can get live for one of those games as well. So it's just going to be non-stop. And that's in and amongst all the various different videos we've got lined up. I'm going to say we're going to be doing a rating show. So what we're going to do for the British and Irish Lions versus the Lions is that during the game, we'll be adding a link to the live comments. And you can go and rate the players. It's going to be both the Lions and the British and Irish Lions. The Emirates Lions, the British and Irish Lions. It's going to be a nightmare. But yeah, it's going to be a nice little sort of platform where you're going to be able to rate every single player out of 10. As soon as you rate, you'll be able to see what everybody else is thinking. And then we're going to go live on Sunday. We're going to talk through those ratings, discuss what everybody thinks. We're going to have, fan forums on the night. So we're going to have live reviews. Excluding the official review we'll do afterwards. It's just going to be non-stop rugby, so it's going to be a very, very cool weekend. But I mean, how's that for a lineup? I mean, we've got 3 Currie Cup games in the next sort of couple of days. We've got British and Irish Lions game. We've got 6 test matches across this weekend, excluding the Lions, the British and Irish Lions game. Back next week Wednesday, there's Currie Cup action, British and Irish Lions action. I think there's Australia versus France next week Wednesday as well. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But yeah, so in terms of the Lions tour, the fact that they are finally here, which is really good to see. They are up against the British and Irish Lions. They're up against the Emirates Lions this weekend. We'll have a look at their tour. I mean, the fixtures. So at this stage, in terms of the tour schedule, so they're currently in Johannesburg, and from the sounds of it, the first part will continue to be in Johannesburg. The Lions game, Sharks game, Bulls game will be in Johannesburg/Pretoria, and the Georgia test will be Loftus in Johannesburg, and then the British and Irish Lions go to Cape Town, where they play against the Stormers, the SAA, and the first test is in Cape Town. At this stage, what it looks like is we might see them stay in Cape Town. I think that's kind of what I'm getting there. They're talking about the fact that the majority of the games might go to Cape Town. They're talking about once they go to Cape Town, they might just stay there. They might risk, they might avoid coming back to Johannesburg and just stay in Cape Town for the last 2 tests. South Africa wants to avoid that. There's no doubt about that. They will not want to stay there. And I mean, whilst it might be the safer option, they will not want to play all 3 games down in Cape Town. They will want to come up here and play 2 games at altitude. I mean, Ellis Park is Fortress Ellis. FNB Stadium is I mean, the Boks have actually had quite a torrid time at the FNB Stadium. I think they've won 1 out of 3 games. I think they've lost the All Blacks twice, and they beat Argentina. I was there when they beat Argentina. But they'll want to play 2 games at altitude because they know that they were working on their big fitness, and they've got that home ground advantage. That's why they've been training in Bloemfontein. That's why they're now in Johannesburg, and they're playing these Georgia matches against Johannesburg. They want this altitude to affect the British and Irish Lions. So they're going to try and avoid going down to staying in Cape Town as much as possible. Good evening, Kai Bennington. So we'll have to wait and see. Look, South Africa's into level 4 for 2 weeks. So, in theory, by sort of next weekend, which is Bulls, and before they even go to Cape Town, in theory, there will be more sort of surety about where we are, and we'll sort of be able to sort of go from there. If the country moves back to being in level 3 and things start opening up, I don't see why they can't come back to Johannesburg. But if things are still going really badly and they're still looking to keep a very strict lockdown, then I think it could be very likely that they'll just stay in Cape Town because it's just a bit safer and easier. I hope they don't. As I said, I'd like to see them play in Soccer City. I'd like to see them back at Ayers Park. I mean, that's just where Ayers Park and the Springboks got so much history there. It will be bleak, even if it's without fans. It'll be bleak not to have a Lions Springboks test that's not at Ayers Park. That'll be it's a big loss. It's these sort of historic grounds. We've really lost Newlands now. And not so Ayers Park is the home of SA Rugby. So to be not be able to have a test match there will be sad, because it's such an important place. There've been some phenomenal games over there. I had tickets there, so I would have loved to have been at the game itself. But we want to be able to see the Lions playing up there, and hopefully we will. In terms of some transfer news, moving away, before we go into transfer news, let's actually just look at how the Lions are shaping up. This being the real Lions, my Lions. And this is the squad that the Emirates Lions have named for their clash this weekend. A couple of very big names in it. First of all, there are 2 big names I'd like to single out. The first one is Jaco Currie. Springbok capped, I think, a player who, without injury, he should have been... Under the right coach and the right scenario, I reckon Jaco Currie could have been a player that could have played 30, 40 tests for South Africa already. I think he's one of the most underrated forwards in the last decade in South Africa. Did kind of get his chance and was looking pretty good, but... through injuries and through them leaving, it hasn't really worked out for him. But he's back at the Lions and had more and more injury issues. But he is a really good player when he's fit. And I think the other big player is Jordan Hendrickse, who has been named in the squad. Now, I didn't think he was even in contention because he was obviously with the SA Under-20s and was still there today. But that series was supposed to finish on Saturday. So as far as I understood, Jordan Henderson wasn't even going to be in contention for this for the British and Irish Lions game. And I had sort of sat there wrapping my head around the fact that I was going to have to see Red Zalinger at fly half with no real sort of backup. But Jordan Hendrickse is back, and all I'm saying is, if anybody knows Cash Van Nooyen, if he's watching, if he's one of the 23 people watching, start him. Start him. The British and Irish Lions series, anything can happen. It's a really special sort of occasion. Go and throw out that 20-year-old, one of the most talented flower halves I've seen in the last sort of couple of years, and let him have a go against that Lions side. As a Lions supporter, we've got absolutely nothing to lose on Saturday. We are expected to get a hiding from the Lions. I think people are pretty much saying that'll be the biggest scoreline. The Lions weren't even supposed to have a match against the British and Irish Lions. So the best thing that they can do is throw caution to the wind and have a go. Have a go. If you get pumped by 40 points, but you score a couple of nice tries, you get pumped by 40 points, but you score some nice tries. Don't try and go in there and be conservative and try and play a game plan to try and win. We won't win on Saturday. I mean, it's very unlikely we'll win on Saturday. But we're certainly not going to be able to physically try and dominate them and force out a victory and keep it nice and tight. Throw the ball around. Have a go. Let's see players like Ras Baklana in space. Get Jaco Currie in some space. Vincent Tuka, I think it's going to be a huge game for them. So very excited to see those players back in the squad. Other big names that have been included who haven't been around in the last couple of weeks is Tita Tole's back there. Who else is back in the squad? MJ Palso, who's been very, very good in the Rainbow Cup there. He's back in the squad there. Frankie Horn is all good. Only Du Plessis returned from injury. I'm hoping he doesn't start. I hope he'll come off the bench. But it's not a bad squad. It's pretty average, to be honest. I think that's kind of where the Lions are at the moment. They're average. GS Gaming is score some injured. The problem is we actually don't know. They didn't actually announce what the issue is, because also there's no Stian Pienaar. And one imagines that they're both injured, because I think that they've been very good in the last sort of 2 months. So the announcement for the team announcement on Thursday. It's the only press conference they're having. So only then we'll be able to ask if Skorsan's injured, what the issue is there. Because there's no Skorsan, there's no Steven Pienaar, there's no Asenate and Klabakanya, whom I'm a bit sad about. I can understand why he was left out, because you've got tight heads in Yanni Dubuissi, Ruandrea, and Carly Sardi. So, you can sort of see why he was left out. But, it's interesting to see that the wings there. So we're going to have to sort of put Ras Bakana, who I thought was phenomenal on the week, last week. And it's probably going to be Jumbo Lengo starting. And I mean, Jumbo Lengo hasn't even part of the Lions setup for the past the better part of 6 months. So just the fact that he's there, one imagines that there must be injuries to Skorsan and Steven Pienaar. There's no other reason why I think that they wouldn't be a part. Guido says your Springbok squad for tomorrow. Yeah, I'll go through that a bit later. Honey Nile, does it mean the Bulls and Cheetahs gets each 2 points? No. So because the Cheetahs can't field a side, they forfeit the game. So the Bulls get a 4-point, not a 5-point, a 4-point victory there. Sheldon Lewin says, I'm interested to see how the British Irish Lions handle the physicality of the Lions. Yeah, as I said, for me, it's a couple of big players. I think that I'm hoping. So in terms of the side, I'd like to see with the Emirates Lions, I'd like to see a front row of Steve Satole, Jaco Visagie, and Carly Sardi. I think Steve Satole is probably the most improved prop over the last year. He's taken a while for him to settle down the lines, but he's now playing really good rugby. I think Jaco Visagie is our best hooker by country mile, and Carly Sardi would not be a miss in that Springbok squad. There's an unbelievable amount of depth at tight end in the Springboks. That's why somebody like Wilco Lowe is not even there. So Carly Sardi for me, I think, is going to be a very big player on the thing. The locks with no Venom Alberts, we know it's probably going to be Reinhard North Nachel and Ruben Skuman. I thought Ruben Skuman's been improving quite nicely, and Reinhard North Nachel, a very young player. The loose trio is going to be interesting because I think the temptation will be, it's MJ Pulse or Jaco Creel. Where do you go with? MJ Pulse has been playing a lot more rugby. He's been playing some very good rugby. He's very nice on the ball. Jaco Creel is just a different caliber, though. He's played this level. He's played against some of these players. He's played test match rugby. So it must be very difficult to try and leave him out. So I reckon they're going to go Jaco Creel, Vincent Tutuka, and Frankie Horn. It's a very, very good loose trio. I'm so excited to see Vincent Tutuka go and play well this weekend. He's been playing such good rugby. I've never seen him looking so confident. He's become a huge part of that side. I think that scrum half will probably be Dylan Smith. I really, really would like them to be brave and trust Morne van den Berg and partner him with Jordan Hendrickse. I'm telling you right now, you've got absolutely nothing to lose with Jordan Hendrickse starting this weekend. We've only seen about 3 or 4 games in this year from him, but he looked a different gravy for the S20s. He looked a different class when he played against. I mean, he was one of the reasons that we beat the Bulls. He looked so composed at that age. He turned 20 today, actually. It's currently his birthday. He's got everything. He's got a big boot. He's got a lot of physicality. He's very good in the defense. He's quick. He can get that backline going. If we don't have a lot of players, we don't have someone like Wanasila Similani available for us. So the centers are probably going to be Burger Odendaal and Dan Creel. Actually, having said that, Burger Odendaal is I've gone blank. Is he not there? Actually, he's not there. I actually missed that earlier. I'm sure he was there. Give me 5 seconds. I need to do a bit of sleuthing here. I was under the impression that Burger Odendaal was there. Yeah, he is there. Did I just not add him, or am I blind? Yeah, so Burger Odendaal is there. So I think that that will be the center combination. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know who else you'd look at putting there. I mean, Emmanuel Russ, I think, was all right over the weekend, but he hasn't done anything for me to really sort of stand apart. So that's why I was sort of going with that in a pairing. And then look, the bench becomes quite interesting because if you're not going to play Jaco Creel, you're not going to play MJ Pulse, so one of them will be on the bench. And so then I would like to see a bench of probably either MJ Pulse if Jaco Creel starts and Emmanuel Tutuka. I mean, there's Ruan Strali there as well, but I really, really like the two Tutukas, and I think that they deserve it. The other alternative is to go with a 6-2 split, which could be quite interesting. You can go say Pulse, Tutuka, as well as Ruan Strali or Sangweni, because Sangweni's been a very, very good player. So that's the other way to do it. You can go with a 6-2 split, and you could have like Morne van den Berg and Fred Zeilinger on the bench. It will be an interesting call. I think that Sangweni's also been a fantastic player the last couple of weeks, so I wouldn't be upset if they went with that. I just think that Fred Zeilinger probably doesn't cover enough positions in and around the park to be able to go with that. Especially if you're going to play Jordan Hendrickse from the start. So I don't see that the Lions doing that. It'll be brave to do it though. Fullback we know will be EW for you, and on the bench we're going to see PJ Boateyani and Ruandrea, I'm sure. And then yeah, after that, Proddy Money Russ, Fred Zellinger, and Warne van den Berg. I just want the Lions to be brave. You know, you've got absolutely nothing to lose, everything to gain on those weekends. So, thoughts about the Jordan Hendricks in the squad? We just talked about that. If the Emirates Lions win, do they get a point on the Currie Cup log or not? Well, no, they don't. I'd love them if they did, though. It'd be quite cool. But yeah, it's completely separate. So they'll get back to their Currie Cup campaign next weekend on the 10th of July. So that's how the Lions are sort of shaping up. Yeah, it's just a little bit average these days, aren't they? There's some good players in there, but a lot of youngsters. When is Edward coming to the Lions? I don't know. I'm assuming it'll be for next season. So I'm assuming that he'll play Currie Cup for. Bongi Manambi is only coming across to the Sharks in November, I think it is. So it could be a similar situation. November is when players' contracts come to an end because that's sort of usually when the Currie Cup finishes. So that's when players usually end. So it'll be November unless the Western Province or Stormers allow him an early exit. So a lot of the times, when their players move now, for example, to overseas, their clubs will grant them an early release where they can then go and join up with their teams immediately. So if we can negotiate that, then he'll meet up with them earlier. But apart from that, probably November. So yeah, that's pretty much the British and Irish Lions update. In terms of some transfers, some players going everywhere. And for the Bulls, they've actually lost a player as opposed to just continue adding them. So Nizam Carr has actually gone back to the Wasps, and I think it's actually the right decision for him. I think he's come to the Bulls, and they've just got a ridiculously good amount of loose forwards. It's unbelievable the depth they've got at loose forward. Do the Bulls? I mean, Nizam Carr is sitting there with Dwayne Vermeulen, Arno Botha, Marcel Coetzee, Alwick Lowe, Malcolm Starden's leaving, but yeah, so I mean the fact Nizam Carr is not getting enough game time for what he is. I mean the fact that he's always often the first person to get dropped. Sometimes he makes the bench. I mean it's ironic because he often captains the side when he plays, but then sometimes will fall out to 23. So he's gone immediately to gone back to the Premiership. I think he wants the game time from the sounds of it. But it's game time. I think he just wants to feel important. So I mean. Fair enough to him. Other news there, the London Irish have confirmed the signing of former Cheetahs player Bernard Janssen van Rensburg. That was announced today as well. And the other news is apparently Ruan Combrink and Lionel Lapu are both on the radar for the Bulls. Lots of sources saying that they might be making a return to South Africa and could be linking up with Jake White. So that would be quite interesting. And what frustrates me as a Lions supporter is if those two are coming back and Jake White's seen them, why can't we bring them back? We've got the same salary cap, so what are they doing differently that the Lions can't bring? Look, I mean, Lionel Lapu's playing, I think it's like second division rugby in France at the moment. I've got no idea where Ruan Combrink is, but those were such good players for the Lions, and the Lions need players of that sort of age and that sort of caliber where they can come in, be, a senior player, guide a lot of the youngsters and get them through. So it's very frustrating to see the Bulls, signing everybody under the sun whilst we sit just sort of twiddling our thumbs watching all our players go everywhere. I mean, Harold Forster was fantastic for the Bulls. But yeah. Honey Nell says, which team do you think can beat the British Irish Lions? Bulls, Sharks, Lions, Stormers. I think Bulls are the only side that can probably push them. Apparently we could see Johan Goosen, by the way, quite soon. I'm trying to think of when it was that they said we're going to see them. So I'm not sure. Where was that article? I saw an article about when Johan Goosen was going to be looking at. It would be very cool if we actually could see him up against the Lions. I'm sure it's too late. No, he's there. He's in Pretoria. Yeah, so he's there on the weekend. I'm trying to see where, and Jacques du Plessis is also in and around there, so that you can sort of understand why Nizam Carr is off. But I remember seeing an article about Johan Goosen about when we could potentially see him. And I want to just try and check when it was. Past week. Here we go. According to independent media, where is he? Okay, so Johan Goosen and Jacques Duplessis will be eligible to play from July the 1st. Well, that's in a couple of days' time. That's on Thursday. So that could be quite interesting. Actually, if we could see Johan Goosen up against the British and Irish Lions, that would be actually really, really cool. Jacques Duplessis will also be a big addition. So it'll be interesting to see if those players sort of slot in. But you can understand why some of them are leaving. Marcel van der Merwe also opted not to come back down because he just wasn't good enough. It's weird because Marcel van der Merwe was such a highly respected player in Europe, and especially the scrummaging. Yet he came down here and I thought he was horrible. I wasn't impressed in one game that I saw him play. Did you watch the Premiership final? Fantastic game. Any idea if Easthuizen will replace the injured Dale Lindy? Also, Tyron Green has been so good for the Queens. For the Quins, I tell you what, there were almost tears. There were almost genuine tears that ran down my face when Tyron Green left the Lions, because you watched him and Lombard and wanted to see the Similani, and you're thinking, ooh, the Lions have got some proper youngsters. Then he left. He's tearing it up. It's taken a while for him to get an opportunity at Harlequins. Hasn't always been smooth sailing for him, but he's now starting to come right, and he was fantastic. I haven't heard anything about Esterhuizen. I think he's probably. I don't even think he'd be the first person in line. I think they'd rather go with Cornel Hendricks if he's fit. And I think Esterhuizen a fantastic game. Unfortunately, I didn't watch the game live. I checked the highlights, and then watched a little bit of it yesterday. I think it was. I was watching a bit of an extended one, but. I mean, Rassie Russ basically said that if it wasn't for the off-the-ball issues, Cornel Hendricks would already be part of the box squad. So I think that, Esterhuizen would have to try and overtake him. I think he's a good player, is Esterhuizen. And look, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I was one of those people that often labeled him as just sort of a bit of a one-dimensional player. But he has started to bring more into his game. It's a bit like Dale Lindy, really, because they kind of started as very powerful sort of inside, but it's only, and I always hated that. Same as Dale Lindy. Let's be honest, for years, Dale Lindy was a little bit one-dimensional. We always knew he had the power, and he often did get over the game line, but he often became quite one-dimensional. And the last sort of 2-3 years, added a little bit of an offload to his game. Defensively showed up a lot, and all of a sudden we got one of the best, if not the best, inside centre in the world. And I think Esterhuizen is starting to add to that to his game. It takes a while for these players to adapt. It's the same as wings. I mean, how often do we see in South Africa, we see these wings hit the ground running, and they are scorching finishers. Proper pace. Really, really good in open space, but they can't catch a ball. If it goes more than sort of 3 meters high, and they can't tackle anything. And they get run over by, and they get blown over by a strong gust of wind. And some of these players manage to add the right things to them, and some of the players don't. I think that's why we saw. I mean, I don't know if people remember back. I think something like Wandile Imzekeva, people remember him back at the Lions. He burst into the scene at 19 years old. I think he was 18. It was his first year out of school. He was playing for the Lions, and he looked really, really promising. And we thought, here we go. We've got a player here, but he couldn't tackle, and he couldn't. And he wasn't great under the high ball, and he just never made it. Whereas I think somebody like Makazole Mapimpi, who really also burst onto the scene. You kind of sat there watching the same thing. Really, really good finisher. Can he tackle? And is he good under the high ball? And over the last 18 months, he's become unbelievably good under the high ball. And he's become the all-round wing before the World Cup. That's what sort of made him so effective. So it's good to see that something like Esterhuizen and Dale Lindy have both managed to sort of adapt their game and just bring a couple of more elements to it, because that's what just sort of makes him a complete player. So where are we here? Jake White will be screwing over a lot of these players he's bringing in. Arsenal's Zamkar. I think a lot of players, funny enough, I think as many, almost not necessarily as many, but I think as more players come in, we're going to have to see a lot of players leaving. And a lot of them will be quite big players, because you kind of get told, leave here, come here, you're going to be part of a project and stuff like that. And if you get here, it doesn't really work out. Look at Marcel van der Merwe, he came here and he couldn't get a starting berth. How long are you going to stick around when you can potentially go take up offers back overseas, or maybe you can change unions and get some starting line, especially because they bring a lot of players who are sort of towards the end of their career. They can't really afford, if they're not playing, they've only got a finite amount of games left in them. Is the Sharks and Western Province game still on? Yes, at the moment it is. We'll talk about the Sharks lineup because they've announced it. Currie Bosch is back in that. Western Province will be named tomorrow, so we'll have a preview out for that tomorrow. He's bringing them in, but not going to give them all game time. Yeah, that's what we're saying now. Two game. Honestly, I don't think the Lions need to sign anybody. I think they've got a good squad. 9 more than Jordan, Skosan, Pienaar, McLaren, Berger, Similani. That's a deadly backline. Yeah, I just think that it's first of all, the problem is depth. You know, it's great having that starting lineup, but I think the depth becomes the issue. And I also just think that they need some experience. You know, those players are great, but you know, the problem with youngsters is consistency. And you know, you kind of, you know, it's amazing how Jake White has managed. The reason that Jake White has managed to turn the Bulls into a winning team overnight, and even with the loss to Benetton, they're still a very, very good team. They're still the best team in South Africa, is because he's blended a lot of youngsters coming through, and just the players he's brought in are players who are playing at their peak of their powers and have got all the experience in the world. You know, your Dwayne from Muirlands. Here, Applon's played a big role, I think, with molding a lot of sort of the likes of Trevina Jacob, Dosh Tambwe, David Creel. But, you know, your Cornel Hendricks, you know, some major players in the pack as well as in the back line. And that's made a big difference. Harold Forster is going to be another one. So I think that's where I would like to see the Lions bringing a couple of players. I'm not saying that you have to go and replace, you know, Morne van den Berg. I think he's a very good player. However, if Jaden Hendricks was available and we could partner up with his brother, I'm all for that. Because I just don't think the Lions, the problem with being a young side is that, you know, it's all very well said that we've got a good side for the future, but how long do you wait? We can't just afford to not be competitive for 2 or 3 years. You've got to try and be competitive now. Grant Swaz says, this is what Jake White does. Every club is approach. Yeah, look, I mean, Jake White often has a very interesting relationship with players. Players either love him or hate him. There's not much middle ground. He's a little bit like Jose Mourinho, I suppose, in that Grant. David Linder didn't use his power in his early days at the Stormers. He used his stepping and offloading more. He got the more under his reputation when he made the box. Yeah, it's actually a good point, because people used to, the Stormers fans would always sort of knock him, because whenever he played for the box, as you said, he was kind of became the crash ball. And we didn't really see that at the box. And I was the same. I didn't really like him at the box, because I just, as I said, he became very one-dimensional. So I don't know if it's a case of coaching that he managed to start bringing in those sort of aspects and stuff like that. I mean, he's one of those players the Stormers fans always love, because they got to see him play week in, week out. But he's the complete inside centre. And yeah, I mean, he's all recovered from the wounds. Him and Archeo Snyman look all good. They had photos yesterday. You could see a couple of scars. I think it was on Snyman. But apparently they're all good. They've been really cleared training. Monica Talves says, if I'm not mistaken, Colby and Corsi might not be available for the first test against Georgia. If that's the case, I'm super excited for Roscoe Speckman. Yeah, well, I think it will be Speckman. I was actually busy writing an article about it yesterday. Because Colby would have only joined the squad yesterday after winning the top 14, and I still double for him. And Spoon Corsi is, well, first of all, he was struggling with the injury for a little bit, and then he's tested positive. So with those two out, it has to be Roscoe Speckman that'll play on Friday. So I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see probably Mapimpi and Roscoe as the two wings. Billy LaRue, I'm sure, will start at full back. He's been in the country for a long time, and they'll want to see how he's doing fitness-wise. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to see the Springbok lineup tomorrow. So let's see who we think is going to happen. And it's interesting because they said that they want to name a very strong side, but how do you get the balance right between naming a strong side and also giving players who haven't played in about a month some game time, as well as kind of sort of testing combinations? So, starting at the front, I think you're going to go Steven Kitsoff. I think they'll go Malcolm Marks, not Bongi Manambi, simply because Malcolm Marks hasn't played in the last couple of weeks. He's been over Japan, so I think he'll start at hooker. And I think that you're going to go with Frans Malhero at number 3. I think off the bench, well, actually we'll get to the bench. The two locks, Franco Mostert will probably start, so it'll probably be him and Eben, to be honest. I think that could see Lewitt. I don't know. I'm not sure who we're going to see in the locks. It all depends on how Archie is doing, for example, how Lewitt's doing. Yeah, I think the lock's going to be the interesting one. The loose trio, well, who do we know is going to start? We know Sekou is going to start on Friday. And we know Pieter Toy is going to start on Friday. So who's going to be an 8th man? Are they going to go Kwagga Smith as something different? Or are they going to go Jasper Wiese? Or are they going to do with one of the Dupree brothers? I'm trying to decide who I'd like to see. I'd like to see Jasper Wiese probably off the bench. I suppose it also depends on who you're starting at hooker. Because if you're starting Bongi at hooker, you probably have to play Kwagga Smith as 8th man, because you need a fetcher. So Yeah, I think that's sort of an interesting aspect as well. So I mean, that's why even if you're starting Malcolm Marx, it'll be nice to have an additional fetcher. I think that's where Quacker Smith comes in. I think Quacker Smith's a player who, if you get him right, can be one of the best players in the team, in any team on this given day. We saw him in that Barbarians game, and he put in a man of the match performance. He was sublime, absolutely sublime against All Blacks. He hasn't really had an opportunity, sort of written off as too small and stuff like that. I think he's got an interesting role to play, and it's interesting that they do keep him around, and he does seem to be quite a senior member of the squad. If you look at, behind the scenes stuff like that, I think he's a very important part of it. It's funny how there's certain players who might not play as much. They might not necessarily be a frontline player, might be always making the 23s, but you can see that either it's because they understand the game very well, or because that they're got very good leadership skills, but they are highly involved. And that was what was quite interesting in Chasing the Sun, is seeing players like Quacker Smith, and even seeing on a day-to-day or on a week-to-week basis, seeing something like Alton Yankees, who operates the tee, and you can see he's got a bit of a mic on him and walkie-talkie, and is in comms with him. So it's funny how those sort of players, not necessarily be in the starting 23. That's how sort of Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber have built a sort of a squad mentality. The fact that just because you're not playing doesn't mean that you're not contributing. And I think that's where players like Alton Yankees, who's been around the block, one of the most experienced players in the squad, he's become a very important member of the squad, even if it's not on the playing field. I think he's obviously got a lot to offer as a player. I'm a very big Alton Yankees fan. But I think Quacker Smith's a little bit like that as well. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, on Friday night, you've got Stephen Kitshoff, who's decent over the ball. You've got... as I said, so I think you probably go, if you can go Kitshoff and Malcolm Marx, you can probably get away with not having a fetcher in the loose trio. But I'd like to see Quacker Smith maybe get a chance. Jasper Wiese would also be quite cool. I know that the Predators have been playing well, but I'd like to see Jasper Wiese ahead of them, because I think that he's something a bit new and something people haven't seen, and this is a nice chance to play him. Number 9, I'm probably going to go with Herschel Yankees. In fact, Cobus Reinach could get a run out as well, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Faf. Because I think that they'll want to see where Cobus Reinach is. The safe option could be to leave out Herschel Young, because I think the scrum off would be quite an interesting one to see who they go with. As I said, they want to name a strong side. So in theory, you're naming Faf de Klerk, and then you would definitely go Pollard at 10. There's no debate about that. He needs to prove his fitness for a start. He needs to prove that he's at full capacity and looking all good. So I think that he's a sure and start. As I said, the two wings, I think, will be Mapimpi and Speckman. Centers, if Dale Lindy's fit, he'll start, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try Van Steen. Somebody mentioned the other day, it would be quite cool to actually see an Alton Yankees Andre Pollard combination at 10-10-12. Not just in this test. In the next test, you go back to the usual stuff. But I've always wanted to see that. I've always thought that Andre Pollard, your Springbok fly half doesn't operate necessarily as a fly half like in the rest of the world. Eddie Jones would play Andre Pollard at number 10 like he does Owen Farrell. It's being a Springbok fly half is quite different to other nations. That's why something like Alton Yankees was made to be in New Zealand. Him and Richard Muyonga and that kind of type of player, very off the cuff stuff. They would have loved that in the number 10. But here, it's become such an important on the fence that you have to be very good to be able to tackle. And Pollard's really sort of made a good job of that. I mean, that's why something like Butch James was the World Cup winning fly half back in 2007. Let's be honest, not the most creative player, not the most technically gifted, but he did the job. So the centers, outside center, I'm sure will be Lakanya. Maybe we'll see JC Creel. And then on the bench, you're going to see Oxenchair. I'm hoping you're going to see Trevor. We'll see one of Malcolm or Bongi. And then we'll probably see the 6-2 splits. We'll see the other two locks maybe. And that's also an opportunity there. So who's going to be your loose trio with mix? You don't have Francois Lowe. So no Francois Lowe, no Duane Vermeulen from the last time they played. So then you could have a Dupree brother, or you could have a Jasper Wiese. I'd like to see Jasper Wiese off the bench. And then if we go with the 6-2 split, the two backs will be a scrum off and Frans Steyn if he's playing, if he's not playing, or else you could go up Lena Fassi, I suppose. You could go. I don't think who else you could put on the bench there. You can go Jesse Creel, I suppose. He covers quite a few positions, so he wouldn't be the worst person in the 6-2 split. Tomorrow we'll know. So those questions will be answered. But Joe, where are we on in these comments, stuff like that? this Lions tour should be cancelled. Definitely not. I've got far too much planned and too much excitement and too much beer stocked up for it. It's going to be too affected by Corona BN19. They can't even use Joburg stadiums. Well, there are going to be Joburg stadiums on Saturday. Look, I think in many ways, in theory, the lockdown will hopefully help. There's less people in and around there. But I think that they're all going to go into a pretty strict bio bubble. And we've seen the success of the bio bubbles. Even during the second wave, we saw the cricket getting it right and stuff like that. So as long as they are in a genuinely strict bio bubble, it can definitely go ahead. And we can definitely sort of sort it. But yeah, touch wood. So far, it hasn't been too bad. And I think that obviously there's always been a couple of cases with players all traveling from everywhere. But in theory, the teams are all together now. So hopefully there should be less disruption. But we'll have to wait and see, I suppose. I mean, we've got in the next sort of 12 days, we're going to have 3 matches. So if those 3 can all get underway, then we should be fine. SA Lions buying young and make them... No, they do. I wouldn't, as I said, I wouldn't mind us just bringing in a couple of older players. 2 of the strongest, toughest players I've seen in the last decade are Dwayne Vermeer and Adelman Jones. Both got injured out of the Curse Tour. That's what. Well, Dwayne Vermeer might still be able to play. They're still not giving up on him. They haven't replaced him, for example. But it's not looking good for him. I'm gutted for Adelman Jones. I think he's such a good servant to the game, and I think that the tour is definitely poor for him not being a part of it. Quacker Smith has never ever stepped on international rugby, but he's a great squad player. He hasn't really played. I mean, if Quacker Smith has more than 10 caps, I'll be surprised. As I said, he was phenomenal against the Barbarians in that stuff, so I think that it's difficult to be able to say whether he has or hasn't made it. But as I said, I'll be surprised if he's got more than 10 caps for the Boks. Quacker Smith had the little opportunity to show the skills he definitely has. Yeah, I agree there. I don't think we need a 6-2 split for this game. I'm hoping we don't go because I'd like to see some more players, to be honest. He's had 6 caps for South Africa. So, yeah. Quacker Smith fanboys are heartfelt Lions. Literally is not good enough for international rugby. Mate, if you watch that game against New Zealand, he was sublime. You can't make a call if somebody's not test match material on 7 matches. You know, so yeah, you know, and even if you are Lions fans, you know, he's one of the big reasons that the Lions are so good for so many years. So it's difficult to make that call until we've seen enough of him. If the LND is not fit, I would love to see Lukanya at 12. I think he would be amazing. Interesting shout. Probably not going to try and get... I don't think we're going to see too much experimentation. But I'm going to try to skip a few ones. Alton will not live under pressure, so why waste experimenting with him? I really hate that whole Alton Yankees buckles under pressure argument. You know, I mean, as usual, he gets blamed for the 3 finals that the Lions lost for Super Rugby, but doesn't get any credit for the fact that they got there. There's a reason Alton Yankees was voted the best South African player, Super Rugby player of the last decade. There's a reason. He's the third. I think he's the 3rd highest point scorer of all time in Super Rugby. So I mean, I know there's an agenda out there. You can use the agenda. I think it's just stupid, and I think there's so many different reasons that go behind that agenda apart from his ability as a rugby player. I just think he's a very different mold to what we're used to seeing in South Africa as a fly half, and I think that if he was born in another country, he'd be phenomenal. I think, you know, it's a bit like, you know, Dan Bigler is your Andre Pollard, where Finn Russell is your Alton Yankees. It depends on what you want to see in the fly half. If you want somebody to come on. If you want someone to come on and try and change a game, you know, you want to play like Finn Russell. You know, Alton Yankees was one of the big... I'm upset at that try when we won in Wellington all those years ago in New Zealand. So he's had some big moments. I mean, he literally single-handedly pretty much won the Lions Currie Cup title back in 2011 at 21 years old. So don't come here with your can't stand the pressure. I hate that argument. Grass White, that's something I'd love to see. Talking about is the Bulls in the bubble now or not just yet? No, so the Bulls will go into the bubble after the Province game on Wednesday. So the Bulls will go into their bubble on Province on Wednesday. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Alton Yankees more. I don't buy the crumble under pressure. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, I'd like to see these players. It's difficult because you've only got 2 tests. But I think that we will see more rotation after the Lions series. We've got those 2 matches against Argentina, and then we've got 4 matches in Australia and New Zealand. So that becomes quite interesting. Do you leave players behind and you send that, because that's what they did last time. You remember when the last time, and it's when we beat the All Blacks. They sent a lot of players over. They sent the bulk of the first team over and kept a lot of players here. I think we'll do a similar thing, because we've got two after what's going to be a grueling test series and the 3 matches against the Lions. We then literally not even got a week break, I don't think. We go straight into 2 matches against Argentina, and then we're over into Australia and New Zealand for 4 matches in a row. So I do think that then we'll probably see some more rotation. And we'll see, your Elton Yankees playing. Hopefully, like people like Ernestine Similani might get a chance and stuff like that. So there's plenty of time over the course of the year to start experimenting with players. Look, this is also, touch wood, granted we don't ever get any injuries. We saw against the Lions, Justin Tipperick and Alwyn Jones were ruled out of the tour in the first 40 minutes against Japan. So Georgia is a hell of a big side. Not in terms of stature. They are literally, physically ginormous. If you guys watched that SC Under 20 game today, my goodness, there were some big Georgians. These guys are not small. So it's gonna be a hell of a 2 tests. I don't think that winning the games is gonna be difficult, but expect a slogfest on Friday. It's gonna be a proper forwards battle. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting watch, but I'm gonna be sitting there like the entire time wincing every big hit and stuff like that, because we can't afford injuries. It's gonna be a horrible watch. It's gonna be great to have Springbok Rugby back. But we all know that we're going to be sitting there going, don't get injured, don't get injured, don't get injured. Especially those players who are just coming back from injury. Your Lua Diagos, your Archis Neyman, your Damon Delendis. But if they can just get past the Georgia series, then, they've got the SAA game. So we won't have to worry too much, because we've got a 46-man squad. So, you can take 23 and still have the bulky players not involved. So it should be quite cool. Which club do you think will give the British and Irish Lions a hard time? I want to go with the Bulls, especially if they can get Jacques du Plessis and Johan Goosen back. And I'll be interested to see where they play Johan Goosen, because I think that Harold Forster's just coming and look pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if we suddenly see him at fly half. I think that Chris Smith's battling a little bit. But very interested to see what they do with Johan Goosen if he is available. I want to see Morne stay and play one more time. I'm meh about that. Obviously, it's a really nice story, and Morne was fantastic all those years ago. It'll be a really nice story. I just don't see where he plays, because I think in that SAA game, you play Alton Yankees. So when do you play Morne? That becomes the issue there. Warren of LaRue is still in horrendous form at 15. Well, I think he was named in the Japanese top league team of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think his form is too bad. Obviously, we can't do. He'll definitely start on Friday, as I said, so we can get a run out. But I don't think we need to worry about Willie LaRue. Look, we know he'll start, for example. We will see Damian Willemse at full back. I think we'll see Damian Willemse. He's somebody I suppose you could do in a 6-2. I'm hoping it becomes also. It has become difficult as well. In the SAA game, you want to play Apelele Fassi. Of course, you want to play Apelele Fassi, but do you overlook Damian Willemse, who's been part of the Springbok squad for a lot longer? So that SAA is going to be a hell of a hard team to pick, because there's so many players you kind of have to leave out, but you don't want to leave out. There's a lot of players you want to blood, but you can't. You got JC Creel and Lekanya Ab. They both can't play 13. They will have to play 13 at some stage, but at the same time, you're sitting there thinking, "Oh, I really want to release one in Similani for one of the games." So between the 2 Georgia tests and the SAA, the Boks have got 3 games where they can kind of experiment, bring some players in, bring some players out. Very interested to see how they do it, and we'll get a very big indication tomorrow. It's going to be interesting times. Well, we've almost been going for an hour, so you're pretty much going to start wrapping it up. I don't think I had anything else. Oh, yeah, I want to talk about the Blitz box. Yeah, so we'll just move away a little bit and just talk about the Blitz box and stuff like that. In case anybody else has noticed, the squad is out. It's actually a very good squad. Quite a few big names there. And their draw today took place for the Olympic Games. And they have been drawn with USA, Kenya, and Ireland, which is quite a hard draw, because USA we know can pitch up for the sevens. Kenya we know maybe not as good as they used to be these days, but they had been a very good side before. And Ireland pretty new to the sevens setup, but it's quite a tricky draw. I'm so excited for that. I enjoy watching sevens. I think it's such a nice change. That's why when you stop bringing these rugby league laws and the stuff like that into the 15s game, the sevens is a nice sort of outlet for just seeing a bit of attacking, very fast-paced rugby. So it'll be quite cool to see that back up again in Tokyo. See if the South Africans can go for gold there. No Roscoe Speckman, no Werner Koch, no Sibela Sanatla. We've all sort of committed to playing the 15s game, so it should be quite an interesting setup. But yeah, last couple of comments, and then we'll sort of call it a night, shall we? TS Gaming says Billy Bailey gets injured, touch wood. Random question: why is the Stormers of Western Province Rugby not as profitable as the other SA Rugby franchises? It's just maladministration, just poor administration, really. It's income-wise, they've got some big sponsors on board. They're commercially very valuable. They've got big fan bases. It's just terrible administration. It's the same sort of issue as CSA. They get a lot of money comes in, but the money's all going the wrong place and not being used properly. It's a horrible situation down there in the Western Province. I saw Snutler's not there. He chose the Currie Cup over the Olympics. No, so what happened? Obviously, because the Olympics were supposed to be last year, and it's been postponed. So the idea, and I think Roscoe Speckman was in the same boat. I think Werner Koch was in the same boat. Their plan would have been to have played the Olympics last year and then committed to 15s after that. So you could have played the Olympics last year in sort of August, and then you would have had full Currie Cup at the end of last year. You would have had full Super Rugby and whatever this year to give yourself the best opportunity at trying to make the box squad for the Lions. That's what Roscoe Speckman made the decision, and Sanatla also made that call. You can actually check out the press conference on Friday last week where I actually asked him. I said, what's the plan for later? What's the plan for the coming years? And I said, are you going to try and sort of emulate Roscoe Speckman? He pretty much basically said that he wants to play the Springboks. But Sanatla wants to play 15s. He wants to play 15s for the Springboks. That's the goal for him at the moment. He's 28 years old. There's still quite a lot of time to do it. But that's why, for example, he's not involved in the Olympics. How do you think will Jesse Kriel get involved in this tour? Maybe a 12, maybe for the SAA team. I think he's an option for a 6-2 if you have any other recognized goal kicker in the starting 15. Yeah, it's such a nice problem to have, isn't it? I mean, where do you bring in Jesse Kriel? He's a fantastic player, but Lekanya is undroppable in that box side. Jesse Kriel hasn't played 15 in a long time. He covers a lot of positions though. So look, we could even see him at wing on Friday. For all we know, maybe we're not going to see Roscoe Speckman. Maybe we're going to see Jesse Kriel on the wing. He has started on the wing before. Very nice problem to have though. How do you bring your players like Jesse Kriel in? How do you get players like Davian Willemse in? What do you do with those? I think that we'll probably see Jesse Kriel. And you said maybe a 12 in the SAA game. I really like to see Wisdom Alani in that SAA game. I think the biggest frustrating would be to see players miss out on the opportunity to play the British and Irish Lions. There are a lot of players who deserve to play against the Lions because let's not forget how big of an occasion it is for them. So like Sekou Mozanoche was talking about how it's a once in a career opportunity and all he wants to do is play against the British and Irish Lions. And I think, look, he wants to play for them as the Springboks, but I think he also just wants to be able to play against them, to be able to play against them, to be able to be part of a tour. And these players who have been called up to the squads will not play against the British and Irish Lions for their unions. So someone like Wonder Cedar Similani will not play against the British and Irish Lions for the Lions. So if he doesn't get a chance between the SAA game, for example, or in any of those 3 tests, he misses out on probably the only time he'll ever get to play against the British and Irish Lions. So I really hope that the Bok manager manages to get every one of those 46 men onto the field between the 3 tests and the SAA team and all get to play against British and Irish Lions, and for me that means playing a full SAA B team type thing. You go and it's 2 23s, isn't it? So you go and say, this is our best 23, right? Well, this 23 is going to play against in the SAA game, because they all deserve to play against the British and Irish Lions. They all deserve to be part of this occasion. Sevens where the USA are the strongest. Isles and all the buggers there. Yeah, actually very good 7 side. Be interesting to see how the 15 side go. They're up against, who did we say? It was Wales. Who are they? Is it Wales? No, Wales is against Canada. Or was it USA? The USA is up against England. England this weekend. Wales against Argentina. No, but that's been changed. It's Wales versus Canada. I'm very confused. There's international rugby this weekend. That's the main thing. Steyn will come on the 60-minute and all if he test match to clutch it for us. I hope not. I hope we don't need him to. If he does, he does. The biggest problem with Steyn is if you're only at a 6-2, you can't have Steyn on the bench. He doesn't cover enough positions. It is England. It's Uruguay, Argentina this weekend, and then Argentina are playing Wales next weekend. Alright, cool. What's the deal with Alan Jones? Is he going to retire indefinitely? Oh, sorry, I'm missing one. Any update on Dwayne and the 5-foot boys? So, Arche and Damien are fine. They're back in training. They were in the photo shoot yesterday. They're with the squad. They've all been cleared, apparently. So, I'm not sure if we'll see it this weekend, but hopefully they should be fine for the test. That's the main thing. I mean, the first test is in what? A month's time, basically. It's on the 19th, I think, the 19th of July. So, it's in 3 4 weeks' time. So, they should all be fine for the 3 Bok tests. Dwayne Familia, no update yet. They haven't replaced him. They're still reckoning he might feature. I think Jake White was quite he was quite confident that we're going to see Dwayne in the British Isles at some stage. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure we'll try and get an update in the next couple of days. In terms of Alan Jones, I haven't heard anything about him. I mean, it's dislocated shoulder, so it's not a major injury. In terms of, I mean, it rules him out of the tour. But whether we'll see him next year, who knows? I mean, when you speak to him, it's not like he signed an extension with Wales. He signed for another year. I'm pretty sure. I'm sure it was another year. Alan Jones new contract. Yeah, so it was in April he signed a new deal until the end of the 2022 season, which would take him through Six Nations, the United Rugby Championship, Champions Cup, etc., etc. So, in theory, he's still going to be around for another year at least. At the end of the day, you've got to think: does he look off the pace? No, I don't think so. I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism, but I think at 35 years old, look, he's 35. He's 36 in September. Dwayne Familia is 35 next month. Does he look like he's retiring anytime soon? I don't think so. Mornay Stain is 36. He's 37 in a couple of weeks' time. So I think Alan Jones has got another year in him. I think he'll probably retire next year. Although he might then think, "Oh, I'm a year away from another World Cup." But an incredible player. I hope he does keep playing. How on earth did Stormers get Ross Speckman on loan? What a steal! Yeah, look, I'm pretty sure that was all orchestrated by SA Rugby. I mean, Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber would have wanted him to have gotten game time, so I'm sure they did it. Whether he hasn't committed yet permanently, where he'll be next season, it sounds like he'll probably be at the United Rugby Championship team. He was saying that he's had discussions with Harvey's Fury, and they both kind of agree that they must do what's best for him in terms of being able to stay in the Bok squad, and that'll be going to United Rugby Championship. So I'm pretty sure his services are available. And Stormers makes the most sense for him because Emil van der Merwe will be leaving. So I think you could see Snutley and Roscoe Speckman as your 2 wings and Stormers, which is a nice combination there. Is the game next Wednesday? Yeah, there is. It is the Sharks versus the Lions next week. And then next week Saturday is the Lions versus the Bulls. We're going to wrap it up there. I need to go have some dinner. It's 10 to 10. I'm starving. But thank you everybody for coming and hanging out. We'll be live again on Wednesday for the Currie Cup. We'll probably do another news show on Wednesday night. Maybe just sort of building up towards the weekend, but we'll confirm that. We might also be a little bit late with our show on the Currie Cup on Wednesday because I've got work finishing at 5. So I might be a little bit late with that one. I mean, we'll definitely go live at 5. So you might just not be live for sort of 5-10 minutes. But if we're not, please don't go to another channel. Please just stick with us. Please do smash like on the video. Thank you very much for hanging out. Bok announcement tomorrow, so some very, very big times, interesting times as a Bok supporter, and yeah, let's just have a phenomenal tour and get involved, and yeah, we want to make you part of the tour, so make sure that you're in all the streams and commenting, and when we do the ratings, make sure you go and vote in the ratings, stuff like that. This only exists because of you guys, so I've got targets what I want to reach, but it's not me reaching the targets over the course of the tour, it's us all reaching the targets. With your help, we can try and hit some big numbers, hopefully, in the tour. I'm very, very excited. Last week comments tomorrow, also cricket. Yeah, I'm very keen after that brilliant performance yesterday. If Heineken Meyer wasn't sacked, Victor Matchfield would still be playing now. Probably a good shot. Maybe he actually should be. Definitely shouldn't be working as a pundit. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic evening. I'll see you guys all on Wednesday for some Currie Cup actions. Please do keep safe during these times. Please make sure you can stay at home as much as you can. But also, if you're in South Africa, go get a takeaway or order some in because the restaurants and a lot of these places are really struggling. So let's try and do our part to keep the SA economy ticking over. And I'll see you guys all very soon. Thank you.